Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magma Rage's episode 67. It's been a while since we recorded an episode. Life and other Hearthstone commitments have kind of gotten in the way. We'll get to that a little bit later, the story of that. But it actually turns out today was a great day to record because Blizzard just dropped some relatively big news. They dropped a blog post talking about the way forward for Hearthstone and a lot of the things that they're keeping in mind. But before we get to that, I mean, just a brief outline of what we're going to be going over today. There's obviously all the changes coming with that. That's going to be the main focus. There's some event news coming up, 2 different events that are coming up shortly after each other. And of course, we're going to be covering our usual esports news. In this week, it's particularly special because Pandemonia here was our local VSGC VS Gaming Championship champion. So congrats. We'll tell you a little bit more about the tournament. If you're not South African and don't really know about it, we'll get into that in the esports section before we obviously cover a lot of the other international esports news that we've missed in our brief hiatus. But moving on to the news, let's first talk about the 2 events. Those are happening pretty soon. I think, though, they were both part of that blog post? Or was the Frozen Throne event announced separately? That one.
The Frozen Throne was announced about a couple of days, almost a week ago.
Oh, okay. Shows how much attention I was paying. Okay, so first of all is this Days of the Frozen Throne event happening from the 19th to the 23rd of September. We're going to be getting a free golden happy ghoul for all your
make sure you log
zoo decks. Yeah, so you have to log in for that. Special quests that rewards 600 gold. Is that 600 gold per quest?
No. Say that in order complete sequential special quests in order that record 300 gold each for a total of 600 gold.
Oh, okay.
So It looks like there's going to be like special, unique quests, and in total you could get 600. Basically, in total the event you're going to get 600 gold, in addition to the happy ghoul.
That's cool. And there'll also be a bundle on a special, basically, on Knights of the Frozen Throne card packs, $20 for 30 packs. Usually you only get 15 packs for $20, so it's a pretty good deal, especially if you need to get some of the Death Knights. That those are the real big selling points of the Knights of the Frozen Throne set.
Yeah, the only thing is kind of just be aware that Knights of the Frozen Throne is, I think, the set that's it's part of the sets rotating out early next year.
Yeah.
So that's something just to keep in mind.
Yeah, Ngora, Knights of the Frozen Throne,
just be careful.
And Kobolds and Catacombs will be rotating out early next year.
But it's still nice, free stuff, events are pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other event, which came as part of this blog post from Blizzard, is the Hallows End event. This is basically the Halloween event. So like we saw last year, I think it was, for Halloween as well, we're going to be getting the dual class arenas. That's a pretty big thing.
It's broken.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't play that much of it because I tend to not play much arena. I kind of go through phases where I try play a little bit of arena and then I don't really get very far. I read up a lot on what's happening in the arena meta, and then I never actually play much of it because whenever I log into Hearthstone, I'd usually rather play Constructed because I kind of need to. So yeah, I haven't actually played that much of it.
So there's not much news about it besides dual class arenas.
Yeah,
and that there's going to be a new paladin hero. It's going to be Sir Annoyo, which basically is Annoyotron. So I just wanted for the emotes, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a couple hellos in the emotes. Maybe every emote is actually just a hello, hello, hello. In which case, I will definitely buy that just so that I can get more hellos for my game time. That's an important measure for me in terms of happiness in Hearthstone, right? We get the giggling inventors.
Probably a special bundle.
Yeah.
But we'll see what that is.
Yeah, it's yet unannounced what exactly is going to be part of that bundle, how much it's going to cost, anything like that. So we're going to have to see exactly what's in that before we can really say whether it's worth buying or not.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if we look through this blog post, the first thing that Blizzard talk about is the state of the meta. So I think this was quite interesting. They talk about the variation in a lot of the decks that are viable right now, and the fact that there are viable decks for pretty much every class. I think the examples they give for Shaman and Priest, Evolve Shaman and Combo Priest, maybe not the best examples. But
yeah, I was like,
I think you'd struggle to find many people saying that it's not a pretty healthy meta right now. I mean, we're seeing it be have a lot of variation for players and what they want to do. A lot of the new cards that Blizzard have been printing have really been kind of hitting the mark. And if we look at a lot of the legendaries, for example, make it into viable decks, and I think that's an interesting measure of their success of their design. I mean, cards like Subject 9 coming a little bit later, but I mean, if you look at some of the weirder legendaries that people thought might never have been good, like Togwaggle. Togwaggle was actually a pretty relevant part of the meta these days, mostly in Druid, of course. But yeah, I think that Hearthstone's in a pretty good state in terms of that, and it also is in a state where there is still quite a bit of skill in the game, and we were seeing a lot of players that have this year in particular that have really had their consistency and rewarded, that we've really seen put together really consistent performances and show that they are some of the best players. I mean, like Hunter Ace, Muzzy once again this year. Just Saiyans also had a really good year. In fact, all of the Tempo Storm team have. So I think also players like Fino, Tyler. I mean, I think there's a lot of really good things happening that are showing that it's actually working really well all the way up to those higher skill ceilings.
Yeah, and it's always good for the game to see that to see that. So yeah, so as a result of them being relatively happy with the diversity, they mentioned that they are watching Giggling Inventor, but besides that, they've basically said that they're not making any changes.
Yeah, I mean, their motivation around Giggling Inventor was that they want strong neutral taunts because they promote interesting gameplay. I'm not so sure I agree 100% like that they're used in the way Blizzard want. I mean, a lot of the time when you think, strong neutral taunts, you think, oh, they're going to be used to slow down aggressive strategies. But a lot of the times, Giggling Inventor is actually best in those strategies. And it's similar for Tar Creeper, another strong neutral taunt that they mentioned. So, I think that taunt does create interesting scenarios because you kind of have to be very aware of it. I wouldn't have been too upset if they nerfed Giggling Inventor, but I can also understand not nerfing it. It's just going to be pretty weird if we go through a whole set rotation with no nerfs, right?
Yeah, it will be a bit weird. The thing is, with like specifically Giggling Inventor, is that it's actually becoming just as powerful in like aggressive decks.
Yeah.
Because especially with like synergies with like Fungal Mance is the one that comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
And it like initially you think a card like Giggling Inventor should really only be, like kind of only fits in slower control decks. But then now you see it in literally any deck. Aggro, mid-range, slower decks, nearly any deck can put that can, except the even decks can basically run Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the like decks like Odd Rogue have been cutting Giggling Inventor though. I mean, some of them, the majority of them are playing one Giggling Inventor now.
But that's mainly reaction, I think, to mainly the text, right?
Yeah.
More than it being like
True.
The card is no longer good in the deck. It's more because people are starting to run Blood Nut and Mossy Horrors.
Yeah. I just think that Blizzard might have almost done things too well if they don't find any candidates to nerf. Because it's going to result in...
That's not a bad thing, right?
Is it though? Because it results in no shake-up in the meta halfway through. Like, I think, to be fair, if they're going to nerf anything, it's only going to happen after the HCT Fall Championships. because that they at least tend to keep their timing with big balance patches like that in line with their big HCT events. So I would expect it to probably only happen after that. And that's even if they need to nerf anything. I think they might not. They might just look towards nerfing some cards that are more problems for design space and see how that shifts things rather than maybe nerfing on power level. I don't know. It just presents a problem, right? Like, what do you do when you don't have...
I think it's a good thing, to be honest. Like, I mean, if they don't nerf, it means that the meta is in a healthy state, which it is. It's in a diverse state, like a good diverse state, which it is. I mean, the reason you want nerfs is because something is overpowered, right? Or is other design space, or it's overpowered, or those sort of things. And currently, if there's no candidates, I think it's a good thing. It means that the Hearthstone design team, I think, are learning quite a lot and are doing a much better job.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I do think that a lot of the time those nerfs can actually bring a lot of players back that might be getting fatigued with the meta, though. I think it's important that Blizzard do a good job of highlighting shifts in the meta themselves, highlighting with these kind of off-meta deck articles they've been doing. Highlighting when new interesting decks are coming into the meta. Like, for example, Secret Hunter right now, it's a newer deck in the meta, and, how these kind of decks can cause shifts in the meta. Because if we're seeing the meta still constantly evolving, then for those that are kind of committed to playing lots of Hearthstone, it's still fine, because you're not just stuck like, these are the 3 decks you play and it's a rock, paper, scissors type thing. As long as we're seeing the meta constantly evolve, that's good. When there's churn, but I don't know. I think the nerfs also create a lot of hype to get people, your like like casual to like semi-serious players back, if you know what I mean.
It creates hype. It creates like discussion, right? It's like. It creates controversy and discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it creates news articles. It creates a lot of media content that gets people to look at Hearthstone again. Maybe if they'd kind of just fallen off out of love with the meta. So I don't know. It's quite interesting. Speaking of balance, though, another thing they did mention was wild balance. Basically, they're calling for some opinions on wild. I mean, neither of us really play Wild. I don't actually remember the last time I played a game of Wild. But from my experience from other card games, like, I'm really pro Wild being a pretty wacky format, if you know what I mean. So where we have these crazy combo win conditions, even combo win conditions that can happen pretty early. It's something we've seen in card games like Magic the Gathering with their formats that include a wider range of cards. You tend to have these wacky combos. So like in Magic, it was, Legacy and then Extended, and now Modern to a certain extent, which are similar to how Wild works. I mean, what do you think about, where do you think Wild should actually be?
Like you say, kind of intuitively for me, Wild should be exactly that, Wild, where you should be able to do silly things. But and I think they kind of touch on it briefly, but what it currently feels like, from what I have sometimes seen and played, is it's basically just standard decks, but with some of the, with some of the good wild cards. It doesn't feel like it's that wild. It doesn't feel like it's that crazy crazy deck and archetypes. Barring one, I think I'm borrowing one or two. Like, I think they're borrowing a couple of decks. But it's mostly like, let's take Odd Rogue, and, let's put some good wild cards into it. Like, that's kind of what it feels like a lot of the time.
Or, a Mech Paladin with shielded mini-bot.
Exactly,
And, I mean, you're looking at, like, the Secret Hunters as well, with some of the older secrets and older secret synergy. Your Mad Scientists and stuff like that. I think the one big interesting deck that does stand out as one of those combo decks is the Star Aligner Druid, which, from what I've heard, apparently is pretty good.
People complain about. Because apparently the people complain how Juicy Psychic Melon is broken in Wild.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if it's a bug, like if there's some bug associated, or if it's just the deck is very powerful.
It's just the ability to be able to tutor for those Star Aligners is super powerful, because I think you can run them
Yeah.
as basically your only 7 drop, so Psych Million always hits them. And then, you go the Aviana Kun brand starter liner thing. That's kind of the combo there. I think you have to play Krakens or something too in order to fulfill the condition for starter liner. And then you can even floop the starter liner if you get that. So I think there's a lot of crazy Druid combos in particular because of the Aviana Kun stuff. I mean, there's so many ridiculous things you can do with that. So I think it's interesting. I think it would just be nice if some of the other classes also had some kind of wackier combos. It's just really difficult to introduce that into the game now on purpose, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because then now you got to ask yourself, is like, do they then what do you think if, like, to print cards like almost intended for wild in new sets, or to maybe even go the road of, do you print cards only for wild? Do you make like a special set, like, in between, like what Magic does with promotional and commander sets, where you literally say, this mini set is only for wild?
Yeah, like, the thing is, you're wasting design space in a way that right now it's more important to, let's say, consider standard and arena balance, I would say, when designing a set in Hearthstone. You only have like 135 odd cards, which is a lot less than, for example, like a whole block would have in something like Magic, where you can fit in some cards that are specifically intended for older formats. So I think that's an issue. They don't have much space for that, and it's gonna feel bad. Let's say they print some legendary that's super cool and wild, and it has to be a legendary because if you could have 2 copies of it, let's say, it would be bad, or like it would be too broken. Then it's gonna feel really bad to open that as a legendary if you don't play wild, which I think right now is the majority of your player base. So I think it's gonna take a while for wild to really get the right identity. I think it's just a natural thing in a card game that, compared to other card games out there, is actually still relatively young. I mean, compared specifically to Magic and even other TCGs like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh.
So we'll see what they do with it, but
yeah,
I mean, we can't say much. So the part that's a little bit more exciting, I think, is, so because they've been moving some cards to Hall of Fame, they've decided that there's kind of like gaps in like the classic set, so they're actually introducing new classic cards.
Yeah,
and there are 4 cards, 2 mage and a warlock and a druid. And so Dib, tell us what they do.
Okay, so obviously these cards are kind of replacing. I mean, what are these cards replacing? Ice Block, Ice Lance, Conceal, and Power Overwhelming in a way. Those are the class cards that have been rotated out, so that these are filling the slots of, right?
In a way, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so just give me a second. I'll get these up for us.
Do you want me to read them in the meanwhile?
Yeah, okay. So first up, we have Icicle. Icicle's a 2-mana epic spell. It reads, deal 2 damage to a minion. If it's frozen, draw a card. So kind of reading through these, I first read Icicle and I was like, yeah, this makes sense for Mage. They have these kind of conditional frozen flavor effects. A spell that deals damage, drawing a card. It's a decent upside to have. It's not something we've ever seen really combine with the frozen effect. Usually frozen, deals more damage or kills it or something like that. So yeah, I think Icicle seems like a reasonable card.
It's basically like Cold Wraith, right? It's a similar mechanic. Cold Wraith does the same thing. If there's a frozen minion, you draw. If there's a frozen enemy, you draw a card as well. Something like that.
I assume with Icicle, if you killed it at the same time, you would still draw the card. So like if it had 2 health and was frozen, and then you Icicled it, I assume it would die.
And you would still draw the card, probably. I think.
So yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't seem like a particularly powerful card to me. I must say though, because I mean, if you have to freeze the minions to deal to actually get the card, I'm not really sure that's worth it. Because if you're freezing the minion, why are you then dealing 2 damage to it? If you know what I mean. Like, you've already kind of dealt with it in a way. Why do you need to deal a further 2 damage to it? Like, I mean, the only synergy really with me is like Frosted Chain or Water Elemental stuff. But You don't put Frostlich Jaina in decks that have cheap spells right now, so I'm not really sure.
And usually you're in a good position anyway, so you
Yeah.
don't need this.
Yeah, but an important thing, to say is that when designing these cards, they've said that they didn't want to make them too powerful because they're going to be in standard for so long. It would be feels bad, man, if they had to print this card, realize it's too powerful, and then Hall of Fame it. That would just be weird.
That'd be so awkward, right?
Yeah, and then shit, now we need to print a new one.
Like, oopsie, sorry guys. We'll try, just try again.
Yeah. So, I mean, the important thing they mentioned is that they want it to be understandable to new players because it's part of the classic experience, and that they don't want them to be too powerful. So that's two important things that we want to keep in mind here, especially when we look at the next three cards, which I think are quite disappointing. First off, we have Tome of Intellect. Tome of Intellect's a 1-mana common spell. Add a random mage spell to your hand. How much do you love this as a value player, Pandemonia? Okay.
Because literally using one card to get one card.
Yeah.
So it's not really value. Kabbalah's Tomb was one card to generate 3 cards. That's what we call value.
Yeah.
I mean, this is literally a terrible babbling book. It's literally the same as babbling book. Sure, it's a spell instead of a minion, but you don't get the body. It kind of fits the flavor of mage. It's kind of the other two cards that because basically this and the other two that we're going to talk about literally feel like the same kind of card.
Yeah.
In my mind, it feels like really lazy design.
Yeah. Okay.
If you read,
I think we'll discuss that. I think the design over all of these three once we've gone through them. I just this is clearly not going to be a very powerful card. The best synergy we can think about for it really is it's a cheap spell that can synergize with Sorcerer's Apprentice and some stuff like that, right? But
Luna,
with
some
Luna
Luna deck, right?
Like that. But I don't really see you wanting to put this in your deck. So next up we have Call of the Void, a 1-mana common spell again. This time for Warlock. Add a random demon to your hand. So we can kind of see the theme here. Random demons. Demons have a ridiculous standard deviation on their, how good and bad they can be. So random demon is usually not very good. Especially when you're paying 1 mana to put it in your hand.
It can go from, Blood Imp to... It is Blood Imp, right?
Yeah, Blood Imp to, Jaraxxus is probably...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Blood Imp to Jaraxxus. And in between, you've got nonsense like Unlicensed Apothecary and Pit Lord and
Pit Lord,
exactly.
Howl Fiend.
Yeah, so it's got such a and I get these are mainly intended, I think, for newer players that will open them and just put it into your decks because they don't have other cards.
Yeah.
Which is not the worst thing. And I suppose it teaches them which cards are good and bad, right?
Yeah, it gives them the experience of... part of the other thing they mentioned is that with these three in particular, I think, is that it gives them the experience of playing with cards they don't have. I find that a bit of a silly excuse, but I think it's mostly this last card that annoyed me, and that's Pilfer, the rogue spell. A 1-mana rogue spell. Now, that's usually not so bad. We've got Gadgets and Auctioneers and stuff that make cheap rogue spells a little bit better than cheap spells in other classes. Add a random card from your opponent. Add a random card to your hand from your opponent's class. So we're seeing the Burgle effect here. I think this honestly might be the best of them, even though I dislike it the most.
Hallucination.
Yeah, just because Rogue has some synergy with cheap spells in a way, with Gadgets and Auctioneer. Sure, you can say, Gadgets and Auctioneer is neutral, so all the classes can do it, but it is just a worse hallucination. That's the key here. I don't think any of these cards are going to see much play outside of, as you mentioned, new players messing around with them.
And I think that was literally the intention, in all honesty.
Yeah, my biggest concern with these cards is that Classic is supposed to be the set that defines the identity for the classes, and I really don't want the identity of Mage to be adding random Mage spells to your hand. It's a theme we've seen that's very common, from Kabbalist Tome to the Spellstone to Babbling Books, of course. Even
to the new one. What's the Mage one? What's that? Astral Rift, the new one?
Oh, yeah, but that just adds 2 random minions to your hand. That's different.
But I'm saying add random stuff to your hand, kind of.
Sure, okay. And then the Call of the Void. We've seen a couple things with random demons, like the demonic project in a way, although that's a little bit different in realistically its application. But Call of the Void, yeah, I'm not too concerned about that kind of theme for Warlock. It's Pilfer that really annoys me because I don't want Rogue's theme to be this whole burgle nonsense that they have been trying to push for ages. I mean, even with Tess, which is by far the best thing and Academic Espionage, the kind of two best cards to push that archetype, it's still not a viable archetype. So please stop, Blizzard. Please. 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 Pretty please. I mean, Rogue's in a pretty decent place now, so I don't really care about those cards. They can keep them. Just please stop printing new ones.
So, yeah. And then another interesting thing moving on, what they have decided to do is they've started to work more on the new player experience. And more specifically, they've decided about introducing 25 new ranks. Basically, it's after rank 25 now, there's going to be rank 26 to 50.
Yep.
And basically, they're going to be similar to rank 20 to 25 in the sense that you can't lose stars, you can only win.
Yep.
But basically, it's kind of to add a more like practice sense to it, for newer players. It's kind of to I think make more, to the word, like stratify it more.
Well, okay. The key points here are once you reach rank 25, you can never go back. So even when there's season resets, if you don't play for 4 seasons, you'll still be at rank 25. You won't ever go back to these new player ranks. And what that means is the new player ranks are only for new players. So you won't get these players with tier 1 decks that just haven't played for 4 months, let's say, playing up against new players. And I think that's a really key thing. That's one of the things people point to a lot about the new player experience, is how unfun it can be coming up against people that have ridiculously different collection sizes to you. And so I think this is probably the best news to me for the whole set, because it makes me want to encourage more people to play Hearthstone. Play through these new player ranks. You can get the feeling of winning, and that feeling of winning is very important to a new player coming into the game and enjoying themselves and kind of falling in love with the game. I think it's very important to put people up against other new people, which is a difficult thing for so many multiplayer games.
Because how do you gauge? How do you kind of define? New. Usually now they've been you haven't played for a while, cool. But like you say, this kind of, at least, I think it will help a lot to alleviate that problem.
Yeah.
Of, somebody having all the cards versus somebody who's brand new.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think this is quite a good move from Blizzard. They even said they're going to add some free gifts and stuff along the way, which, also helps to incentivize. Yeah, we go. Incentivizes people to play.
Yeah.
My tongue just couldn't get around that one. But,
we'll see exactly. I'm guessing that all these ranks will have much less stars, if any. I don't think they didn't specify that. They said you can't lose stars whilst ranking up. But
so there might still be stars, but
but maybe they'll go back to 3 stars maximum for these ranks. I don't know.
Yeah,
depends how long they want the new player experience to be. And don't worry, if you are creating a new account if you are creating.
If you make an additional account,
so you can
just skip it. Basically, if you have played before, for whatever reason you created another account, whether it's on a different server or whatever, you can skip. You can choose to skip it.
Yeah, which is important.
Yeah, which is quite handy.
Yeah, but you will lose out on the loot that does get offered for new players there. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. There's still a lot more that they need to provide information for, but honestly, even though I will never see this myself, I'm never going to experience this other than when I'm trying to encourage people to start playing Hearthstone. I think this is a massive improvement and a really good thing. And it is addressing an issue that has been something people have brought up for a very long time now. And I'm very excited to see them addressing that.
Yeah. But now from the completely new experience for the more veteran players, probably actually for the rest of the article is pretty good, but this is probably the worst news for I think a lot of the competitive players, is that the tournament mode, the tournament mode that was supposedly in the works and was actually like early, was actually supposed to start going to beta like around now, has been literally put on hold.
Yep. Um, so this is like I can kind of sympathize with Blizzard on this, which is probably not going to be a very popular opinion. But as you know, a developer and I mean somebody that's worked on games as well, it's kind of something that you might have an idea, but once you start playing with it and testing it out, once you actually get that idea through the initial dev phases and you're prototyping it, you might realize that it doesn't really work how you want it to. I personally think that, like, you know, what they're saying is that it wasn't really providing a new experience for Hearthstone. And I'm not really convinced, like, for me and for most of the people I think that are excited about tournament mode, they didn't want a new experience. Well, exactly. They just wanted to be able to do things in a more refined way rather than having to go through all these third-party websites. You know, I think it would have been a big thing to encourage more people to play online tournaments, to have it. You know, if you could, in the client, find a tournament to play and then play it, like, that would be a massive step, I think. But, I mean, yeah, they were saying that it felt tacked on and wasn't integrating into the larger Hearthstone experience. I imagine their UX team had some difficult discussions with the devs that might have actually been interested in pushing this. So, you know, it's not something they've said they've scrapped forever. They have said they would revisit it, but that it seems to be on hold. And, you know, that's a case of prioritizing your, you know, commitments as a dev team. There's only so much you can do. And, I mean, we could always say, yeah, Blizzard are, you know, a very rich company, whatever. They can afford to hire lots more devs, but it just doesn't really work like that. It's hard to get people of the right quality that you want when you're a company like this, and it's important to actually keep the dev team and the Hearthstone team at a certain size, I think, for them, in order to facilitate probably the type of, like, inter-team communication they want. Like, having worked at a lot of startups myself, I can kind of understand that indie developer mentality that we often meme about Team 5 having.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
honestly, like that's really disappointing. I mean, like, you know, I sympathize with what you're saying, but like, it I don't know. Like, I feel like the competitive aspect tournaments is one of the major aspects that where the potential for Hearthstone to grow in, and
Yeah.
like up to now, not having a built-in tournament mode, I think, is greatly limiting it. I mean, not to mention the fact that, I mean, sure, there's lots of sites and things available, you know, where
Mm.
you can go, like Battlefire, Challenge, or Smash GG. But the average person who doesn't want to, you know, have to go and type it, you know, have to go and sign in on a different site and put in your details and
Yep.
register, you want a simple tab in game to click to go, you know,
Yeah.
sign up or log in or, you know, search for tournaments starting soon. You know, you want that
Yeah.
seamlessness.
Yeah, you don't want to have to go and find some aggregator website that tells you where or, you know, which site is hosting a tournament that is conveniently timed for you.
Yep.
You know, Hearthstone calendars or whatever it is. I think that's the website I'm thinking of. That is kind of an aggregator that you know, lists all the tournaments that are being, all the kind of open tournaments that are being hosted and when they're happening, so that you can find the one that kind of suits you if you're wanting to play an online tournament. You know, having this stuff in
But
game, I
then you have
think
to
would,
go to that site, and
yeah,
then you have to sign up for that site. You have to log in, like sure, you know, and then you have to go read, and then then you have to go and read that particular site's rules, you know, and
yeah,
an admin setup, and it's just really a lot of effort that could be minimized, I think.
yeah. I mean, there's two kind of points to this. The one is that, like, it makes organizing tournaments much easier for those that are interested, but it kind of also makes organizing tournaments less incentivized for a lot of people. In the sense that, like, if you are somebody like uh, Smash.gg or Battlefy, and let's say you're hosting your own tournaments on your own website. If you're ESL, for instance, hosting your own tournaments on your own website, you're driving traffic to your website, which is relevant for
Mm.
you because that's how you generate your revenue with ads and generating a user base, etc., etc. Now, if Blizzard kind of take over all of that functionality themselves, they're kicking out third parties in a way. and discouraging them from, hosting their own tournaments. I mean, in a way, they've kind of done that already with the whole HCT system this year. They've still left the Challenger Cup open to, websites like ESGA and that also host tournaments. But I don't know. It is an important thing to think about the ecosystem that comes with it, and how, discouraging third-party websites is maybe not always the best, although I'm still definitely, on the side of I would like to be able to do that stuff in game. I mean,
Yeah, but just bear in mind, and this is something people largely forget, is just remember the only reason why these third-party sites started up and existed was because of the initial lack of built-in tournament functionality.
Yes.
So sure, they've now built up, like their own sites and they want traffic, but like, I feel that the reason that you build in tournament mode, you shouldn't really, like, you're getting rid of something that only was sort of a placeholder until there's official in-game functionality. I don't think,
yeah, but a lot of people that are organizing tournaments and for example, one of the best examples is actually Striveware, although I don't think they don't exist anymore. I think they closed down.
Shut down, I think.
But they were an example of a tournament organizer that was organizing through their own website with their own business model around it. And it's important there's two different ways to take esports generally, right? Either you take it the very developer or publisher or whatever, the company that own the game, that own the IP, controlling everything, like Blizzard are doing with Overwatch, or you take it in a way where you can have more independent hosts and stuff, like Dota kind of was, although is a little bit less now. And CSGO is a little bit like that. We've got the ESL majors and stuff like that, which, there's still collaboration with Valve, and Blizzard with Hearthstone are kind of in between. You have to work with Blizzard if you want to host an HCT event, and those are the big events, right? But there's a lot of organizers that have been around for a long time that get a fair amount of their traffic by driving people to these sign-up websites as well, like DreamHack. I mean, if you want to sign up to a DreamHack event, you still have to buy tickets and go there. I mean, that's a little bit different because it's an offline event, so you'd hope they can cater for that by the in-game. But it is a question of how you want your esports models to work. And honestly, what they're talking about in this is they're not even talking about esports, right? We're talking about esports with in-game tournaments, but Blizzard are once again kind of reinforcing the idea that, I mean, this is exactly what it says. Earlier this year, we talked about adding a new feature to Hearthstone that would make it easier to organize tournaments for fireside gatherings and private events. So, I mean, that's not really screaming esports. Maybe you think esports fits into the private events section there, but it doesn't seem to be their goal right now for this mode, at least. So maybe we're crying over spilt milk to a certain extent, and that's not really what they were going to build anyway. And we would have just been disappointed. But I'm obviously still just disappointed that this exists. I was pretty excited for tournament mode, and I'm certainly not happy to see it cut out like this.
Yeah, so I mean, basically on hold till further notice, and that's pretty all. I think much all to say about that, really.
Yep. And then there's a little bit around fireside gatherings. So basically, they're going to be trying to incentivize fireside gatherings a little bit more, giving innkeepers a little bit more control over the fireside brawls that get played, I believe. Instead of just having the one rotating monthly one, the innkeepers are going to be able to select an additional fireside brawl from a curated library of brawls. So that's particularly relevant for, let's say, your fireside hosts that are hosting weekly events. You get a little bit more
Variety,
choice. Yeah, a little bit more variety. So one week you can do the one brawl, the next week you can do the next. At least it encourages people that are having events at that kind of frequency. I think it also just importantly indicates that they might be looking at other things to incentivize people to go to firesides with. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the same for your experience, but with my experience of being involved and hosting them and ushering lots of new people into coming to firesides, even now people are still excited about getting Nempsey, right? I mean, I've experienced that quite a lot. So it's incredible what adding these little incentives can do to encourage people to come to firesides and get more involved in their local Hearthstone communities. So I think that's a positive. Anything that they're going to add to make it a little bit better and a little bit
for
more
sure.
incentivized for people to
Yeah.
come and join
And
those.
then I think they talk a little bit about the HCT, but then another sort of I think quite important thing they talk about is actually they talk about the welcome bundle, and they're changing it in a way that previously you could buy 10 packs and you got a random class legendary,
Yep.
but now what they're gonna do is so it's still 10 classic packs, but the random legendary is going to be one of 6 of the legendary dragons. So I think it's all the legendary dragons. So it's Alexstrasza,
All the classic
Deathwing,
ones. Yeah.
Malygos, Nosdormu, Onyxia, and Ysera.
Yep.
And so you now guaranteed one of those with the welcome pack. And kind of the extra little nice thing, I mean, basically comes down to Blizzard want your money, is that if you've purchased the welcome bundle before, you can purchase this one as well.
Yeah, and the welcome bundle is really good value for new players.
It's quite cheap. Was it $5 or $10? It was.
I don't remember offhand.
It's $5.
Okay,
Or €5.
I'll probably end up buying it again for my NA account, maybe. Probably won't buy it for EU. I don't think I bought the welcome bundle in EU either, the previous one. But I mean, it is good to see them providing more of these kind of bundle things. The guaranteed legendary thing is always nice, and it's nice in a way that they're moving towards neutral legendaries. You know, because something like Ysera can slot into so many different decks. Even Alexstrasza, although it's mostly used in your kind of combo decks. Then you get the other ones that are a little bit more fringe, like Malygos is specific for certain decks, but it has been a very powerful neutral legendary for a long time, so it's a good one to have. Then you get the slightly more fringe ones.
Like
Yeah. But, you know, people enjoy memeing, so, I mean, it's definitely a card that I think new players will enjoy playing to a certain extent, you know?
So, yeah, I mean, so if you're starting out, and this is a really, like, once they release it, it's going to be a pretty... Actually, if you're a new player now, it's probably a good idea to actually buy the current welcome bundle.
Yeah.
And then buy this one, because, like, I think from what I've read, from what it reads like it's going to literally replace the previous one.
Yeah, it does seem like
that. So
otherwise that would be too confusing in the store, right?
Exactly. So if you've purchased the old one, you'll be able to purchase this new one as well. But once this new one releases, looks like that's the only one you're going to be able to buy.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're a new player now thinking of getting to Hearthstone, I would definitely suggest picking up the current welcome bundle and then picking up this one when it goes live. So you essentially get double the value.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I say, $5 for 10 packs and a legendary, I think is pretty good if you're starting out. And obviously, it's Blizzard, you know, trying to get even more casual players to spend a bit of money instead of just the super competitive guys.
Yeah. You know, it's important to break the seal in a way of spending your first money on the game. That kind of is going to encourage people to spend more. From an evil marketing perspective, that's kind of a little bit what it's about. But I think it's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit more. I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as that. I think it's a good move to help make it easier for players to spend a little bit and get a decent return.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I think that's actually everything from this big announcement now. That was quite a big one to drop just a couple hours before we were going to record today.
Yep.
And I mean, our major topic for today was actually going to be on VSGC. So for those who don't know, the VS Gaming is a tournament organizer here in South Africa. They run a league that operates pretty much throughout the year, from early on in the year until now. And the finals have traditionally been at Rage, but this year they were at Comic-Con for the first time.
Comic-Con Africa.
Yeah, sorry, Comic-Con Africa. The first Comic-Con in Africa, and there's, you know, they are for like lots of different esports, everything from Dota and CSGO, two of the bigger ones there, to Overwatch and LOL, Call of Duty.
They had Quake Champions even.
Yeah,
and
there was a Quake one, Rocket League. So there's lots of esports, and Hearthstone is one of the ones. which is obviously the only one we care about. And that's partly because Pandemonia here was taking part. I was not, but I was kind of involved in helping him prepare at least. It was definitely worth it in the end, as Pandemonia ended up taking the victory. And, we can see here his excited victory face as he's got his medal around his neck.
Oh, yes. I'm not known for being very photos. That's my very excited face, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations. You've written a tournament write-up, which we'll link in the description. And there was also a wrap-up of the tournament from Penguin for Esports Central, the site that he and I both write for. And then there is an upcoming article as well with me interviewing you, because, we don't talk to each other enough, about the
hard
event
questions as well.
Yeah, none of this friendly stuff that happens on Magma Rages. It's the tough questions.
It was almost like I was writing. It felt like I was writing an exam. I like sat there and I was like, "Geez, like, how many marks is this for?"
Oh, sorry. Would you have preferred if I gave them marks?
Yeah, please write 5 lines for 5 marks. Or
okay, yeah. You wanted marks so you could guess the length that you have to write.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, congratulations. Do you want to give us a brief summary of the tournament experience first of all before we talk about the decks?
So when it comes to tournaments, I always really enjoy the tournament experience. I think historically, I enjoy it a lot more than like playing ladder. And so, like for example, as a tournament player, I think I play a lot better than I do when I'm just grinding ladder. Because playing for something, there's something at stake. It's a lot more. There's a lot. I don't know. Sometimes the pressure and the sort of what's at stake makes me focus a lot more.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that aspect of it, and also meet even though it's still online, the offline aspect of meeting, being right across from the people you're playing, I think adds an extra atmosphere to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is always nice going to events like that, and as you say, I mean, I think we can both agree there. It's much more fun playing tournaments than it is grinding the ladder. Everything down from the hours of preparation we do with spreadsheets. Honestly, that's still kind of more fun than grinding ladder.
I'll literally just eventually give up on the grind, right?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, when you're in the tournament playing for those high stakes, playing for the title, playing for the prize money, playing for your pride, whatever it is, playing those series, it can be really exciting. The added pressure definitely adds a lot more fun to it as well.
Yeah, and also a lot more tiring because, it's a lot higher concentration. When you play ladder, you can play a couple of games and then decide, okay, cool, I'm stop playing. But the way a tournament works is, there's rounds and it's structured. It's like, okay, cool. You finished your game now. Oh, there's another game just now. So,
yeah,
no time for breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, we were even joking. The one, I think it was the HCT Montreal, where it was a Killing All Day who put up the sign. They were playing a really long game, and he's like, I'm not going to the bathroom.
I don't know. I didn't see that.
But it was basically it was like 2 guys. He was playing a super long fatigue matchup, but the guy really needed to go to the bathroom. And the casters obviously became quite a joke. And, sometimes it feels like that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's have a quick look at your decks as well. We might discuss this a bit more next week, as we were kind of blindsided by the other information. Your deck titles here are particularly relevant, as Blizzard have sharply denied you after you asked here for them to please nerf Giggling Inventor. And there are quite a lot of Giggling Inventors in these lists. We've got 2 in the Token Druid. We've got we've got 2 in the Control Warlock, but actually none in the Odd Control Warrior and none in the Secret Hunter. So I mean, if people want to read a little bit more about all the thoughts, they can check out the Medium article or report, whatever you want to call it, that you wrote. But give us a brief TLDR for why these decks.
So TLDR, we did a lot of research, predicted a lot of aggro. We came up with a lineup that's particularly targeted aggro. Decks like Odd Rogue, Zoo, Odd Paladin. This lineup was meant to like destroy them, which I was fortunate that it did. This deck's very weak to, we did not expect a lot of. Anti-control lineup consisting of like Shadowwalk Shaman, Taunt Druid, and Quest Rogue, which I was right in that prediction in terms of it wasn't going to be very popular. The problem is that the guy, first of all, in my group, and that I ended up playing in the winners bracket final and the grand final, was playing that exact lineup.
Yeah.
Simples. So basically,
Thankfully, no Taunt Druid though, because that would have been
luckily
really
no
bad.
Taunt Druid. Yeah, that would have been really bad. But so basically, in the whole tournament, I had to play 4 series against him for kind of a lineup that I was kind of sitting there crossing my fingers, going, I hope no one brings this lineup or I don't face them.
Yeah.
I ended up facing it way too many times. But yeah,
I mean, those 4 series, you played him in the group stage, managed to actually beat him, which is not something we were necessarily expecting. And then you had to play him again in the winners bracket final that you mentioned. That one you unfortunately lost, which meant when you met him again in the grand final, you had to beat him twice in a row with the unfavored matchups and the unfavored lineup, and somehow you managed to do that. So
I don't know. It's still super surreal. I still don't know how I did it, but we are.
Yeah.
And so just sort of a kind of a warning, I think, is kind of like, I think some players should realize that this was built for a specific tournament, and like with a specific meta in mind. So for those of you looking at it for like suggest for deck list for ladder, just be very careful. And I would probably, I think the token druid list and probably the
Secret Hunter
token
one.
and the secret hunter list are probably very like relatively tier 1 lists that you could use on ladder.
Yeah.
But like Odd Warrior and like the Control Warlock list,
I think the Odd Warrior is kind of fine for ladder too.
But like this particular variation with the Faces Manipulate and Azalina, Soul Thief are obviously geared a little bit more towards beating the slower. I think I love the slower matchups more than aggro.
Some of the matchups that are not necessarily favorable anyway.
Yeah. But like the Control Warlock, I'm not sure if at this point I would probably suggest recommended for ladder. It was one of our more off-meta fringy choices as an extra anti-aggro deck. So that's kind of the main one, which I would kind of say, if you play on a ladder and do badly, don't blame me.
I mean, I think, you mentioned the overall strategy here was also anti-control. I think the important part about, anti-aggro. I meant the important part about that is that it isn't as susceptible to the anti-control strategy, one-upping that anti-aggro strat, because it does have the 2 kind of more mid-rangey decks in the Token Druid and the Secret Hunter. So I think that's an important kind of thing, where you could build a lineup to beat aggro, but also not make it as weak to the strategy that's meant to beat the strategy that beats aggro.
Which is exactly like kind of what. So like, that's exactly which is exactly what Simples, the guy, who I beat in the final, his strategy was to beat the decks that were trying to beat the aggro. It was kind of, like the rock paper scissors. It was essentially a complicated rock paper scissors, and I was quite fortunate in that regard to be able to beat him.
Instead, you used like a steel ball bearing. Wait, actually, you used. No. You used a spiky rock, so the paper couldn't cover you entirely.
Oh my goodness!
I was trying to think about how that works in the analogy. I was like, if you were a metal ball bearing, the scissors wouldn't be able to cut you. And then I was like, wait,
scissors made of rock. The scissors made of rock.
Yeah, scissors made of rock. Diamond scissors. I don't know. Now we're just getting silly. That of course was not the only esports that's happened since we last had a Magma Rages podcast. Quite a lot has happened. We've had the HCT playoffs have happened for all 4 of the regions really. For Americas, EU, Asia Pacific, and China. The Americas finalists that we're going to be seeing at the fall playoffs, which are coming up soon, is Just Saying, Bloody Face, Language Hacker, and Tincho. Tincho being from Argentina, Sen and Bloodyface from America, and Language Hacker from Canada. The North American players there at least are pretty well known. And then from Europe, we have Sintelol and Moyen from Germany. Germany has been really, really strong this year. And recently, they had the most players in the Europe Summer Playoffs as well, like per country. And then Renman and Hatul. Renman from Russia and Hatul from Israel. Hatul, interesting, as he's like a Tavern, or he was one of the Tavern hero qualifiers, essentially, the Challenger. Yeah, that's what they're calling it this year, the Challenger Series qualifiers. And he's also like a Tavern host in Israel, one of the kind of...
So he was kind of the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody that's been involved in kind of doing work for the community there in Israel. And it's, good in ways to see somebody like that, get their shot as a player as well. And then for Asia Pacific, we had Tyler, Rivius, Blood Trail, and Akumeka. All pretty well-known names. Tyler having just moved, or now falling under the Asia Pacific region after having just moved to Vietnam recently. Previously one of the top European players. So, 5 European players through in a way.
Yeah.
And then Rivius had a really wacky lineup with two Mechathune lineups, two Mechathune decks. He's a player that very, very, very often plays anti-control strategies. I mean, he's played a lot. He's very well known for playing Quest Rogue as well. Blood Trail from Malaysia, I think it is. I'm not actually sure. And Akumeka.
That's not Malaysia. Is that Taiwan? I think that might be the Taiwanese flag.
Is it the Taiwanese flag? I'm actually not that sure. And then Akumeka from Australia. There was a bit of controversy. Taiwan. My apologies. For Akumeka, there was a bit of controversy around his and Sequinox's game that decided there was kind of a remake decided from the first game that Sequinox had won, and then Sequinox went on to lose that game. And I don't know, it was a little bit controversial. There's a lot of drama. You can kind of check out Twitter and Reddit probably if you want to find out more about that drama. We don't really have too much time to go into it this week. But both of those players are good players, and I don't think either of the players themselves were at fault. It's more a case of drama around the admins and
the handling of it, I think.
And the handling of it from Blizzard's side. So, don't hold it against Akumeka. He is, of course, a good player. So, I will let you cover the Chinese finalists here.
So, it's Trunks, which is he's been in the HCT before. It's so now I might even just butcher these names. It's Shizi Zhao, Bai Du Hao, and Kao Miao. I don't follow the Chinese scene, so the only one I really know is Trunks because of like his appearance at other HCT. But yeah, those are the Chinese finalists.
Yep. So I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to look forward to. It's happening from the 11th of October through to the 14th in Los Angeles, California. So make sure you check that out. And of course, if you want to, be one of the people qualifying, you've got to grind for those HCT points right now on ladder and in tournaments if you're able to go to things like DreamHack. Those are kind of some of the best open tournaments and some of the other HCT events that happen. Speaking of which, there was also DreamHack Montreal, which just saying played against Fino in the final. It was actually a really cracking series, to use a terrible sports terminology. I would definitely recommend going and watching it. I almost don't want to say who won because that spoils the series a little bit, but I suppose at this point that might be known. So if you don't want to know, block your ears for a bit. But Just Saying managed to win after coming back from 2-0 down in last hero standing. Fino's Quest Rogue had gone 2-0, it had won the unfavorable, and then it lost a kind of favorable matchup against Death Rattle Hunter, and Just Saying was able to claw it back from what honestly seemed like a ridiculous scenario in that third game. I mean, the casters, everyone was calling it as over, that Fino had won, and the Death Rattle Hunter managed to make it through. So it was a really, really great series to watch between two players that have performed exceptionally well this year. And the other interesting thing. Obviously, HGG has been happening, and we're through to kind of the next round out of the Swiss portion now. And there's going to be quite an interesting thing happening with Twitch. So we've seen Twitch do some like loot rewards for players watching tournaments. We saw it for like PUBG's PGI Invitational thing. I mean, Pandemonia and I were both there watching, voting for our teams to get our PUBG skins. But with HCG now, you're going to be able to cheer for for a team. So these are like your national teams that you're going to be able to cheer for, the ones that are competing.
Top 16.
Yeah, for the top 16.
And like you need to follow the article, but there's only some of them are actually like part of it, because basically part of the campaign also is that the teams actually get a chunk of it as well, which is really nice, I think.
Yeah, well, it seems, I mean, Blizzard are getting a 50% cut from what I heard, and the teams are getting 50%, which then gets split between the players, because these are not really like, MGO type teams. These are national teams, so they don't have like a single MGO that would take a cut or something. It would get cut straight between the players for that other 50%. And there's still some details that need to be revealed as far as I know, but if you cheer enough, you can get some in-game rewards like a card back, and you can also get some Twitch
you get
emotes.
Well. So you get a combination there, like depending on the total amount of bits that you cheer. So the bits, so the important thing of bits on Twitch is you actually have to buy them.
Yeah, you can also watch adverts to earn bits, but most of the time you have to buy them.
You get basically you can get a combination of emote packs, some like actual Hearthstone packs, and then at the highest tier, if you cheer a total of 2,500 bits, you get a special card back that will be put into the game. So the basic maths boils down to, for those of you who don't really get, it's approximately $34 to buy 2,500 bits, and for that you get 22 packs, some Twitch emotes, and the card back. But also you might get bonuses depending on, there's like basically the equivalent of stretch goals. Yeah. Where so currently 8 million bits have been cheered, so therefore everyone gets a bonus, 2 Boomsday packs as long as you have cheered 700 bits. Okay. So it kind of so I think it boils down to, you get a $30. Usually the packs cost, which costs $30. Yeah. So you're paying $4 for the Twitch emotes and the card back. Okay. That's like what the basic math boils down to.
Okay, so you're saying ultimately if we hit a bunch of the stretch goals and stuff, it might be kind of worthwhile in terms of the packs and stuff?
So at the moment, basically, so currently,
is it spread out across different sets?
It's spread out. So 4 classic packs at 600 bits, 4 classic packs at 1,000 bits, 2 Witchwood packs at 1,200 bits, 2 Boomsday packs at 1,600 bits, and then the Getting Your bundle of 10 packs at 2,000 bits. And then obviously the emote packs are kind of like, there's different emotes slotted in between there as well. I mean, I'm not going to go through the amount of bits you need. So basically, currently it's $4 to get the emotes, the card back, and 2 extra packs.
Okay. So, I mean, ultimately, I think whether this is worth it to you or not depends on how much you want to be involved with, cheering for HCG. I think that should be something. You shouldn't really just be doing it just for the packs, I think, and the card back, although some people are definitely going to want the card back. Just to be, just because they are kind of completionists, and I can definitely side with them on that one. When I first thought, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to get involved in this and get the card back. But then looking at $34, I don't know, maybe I kind of that changed my mind a little bit. I don't really need the packs so much, so I don't know how much it's worth it for me. But definitely gonna look at it. But I think the interesting thing here is this whole crowdfunding model. I mean, we've seen it pretty much most successfully happen in Dota, where the international raises up to like $27 or $26 million prize pools for the big tournaments of the year, equivalent to HCT's world championship. Do you think that this kind of do you think it's good to have these kind of crowdfunding in a way for tournament prize pools? Do you think it's good that it's happening through Twitch, particularly because it also means that people are watching the event, hopefully, in order to cheer?
Yeah. So I like it that they are. Honestly, I do like it that they're introducing more. Uh, more ways of promoting the game. So like through this whole cheering and thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the fact that you have to spend money and things. Obviously, marketing. I would not honestly. I would not be surprised if we see in the near future where they actually have they go through the almost the TI. It is the TI, right? Which is like where you buy like the battle pass and
Yeah.
Where we could almost see a Hearthstone version of that to fund. I don't know if it would be the World Championships, but I could easily see them introducing a Hearthstone tournament where you buy a pass, maybe. And I mean, in Hearthstone, it's even easier. You get special quests and things. So
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think it adds more diversity, right? And more variety. I think is always good.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody that's bought a lot of the TI like battle passes and stuff, I mean, it's definitely something that I would be interested in for Hearthstone. Something I definitely think would be great to encourage to increase the kind of prize pools of the HCT stuff in general. It'd be nice if it could, in a way, be split out across HCT events throughout the year to kind of reward the more consistent players in a way. Getting more prize money down to like your top 16s as well at some events, and just increasing the prize money so that players can, get, let's say, if you're getting a top 16, a top 8, it's funding you to go to the next one. And helping to encourage more players to be going full-time pro, let's say, in Hearthstone. It would be nice if it could be split out there as well, instead of just being like a massive thing for Worlds, right? That's kind of how, in my experience from having seen it in Dota, how I would actually like to see it changed, that kind of model changed a little bit. It is also relevant to note in like Dota, when you buy the compendiums, that's what they're called, sorry. When you buy the compendiums, 25% of the money you spend is going to the prize pool, essentially. So 75% goes to Valve. So in this way, 50% going is actually a little bit higher, even though it seems like a little bit less, rather than 50% going to Blizzard. There's also like a portion of it that goes to Twitch when you actually buy the bits. That's relevant to note. So it's not like Twitch are just not getting anything out of this as well. It's a little bit less clean than just a 50-50 split, let's say. But also the bit revenue itself, and I mean, I think it is really good. I just would like to see it expand a little bit more beyond HGG.
Yeah, but it's also, like I was gonna say, it's nice to see it's also encouraging more people to interact.
Yeah.
Because up to now there haven't really been that many. I mean, I think the closest was there was a Twitch there was a streamer competition where. Remember, you picked a side and you got like a different card. There were two sides. You got a card back, and then and then depending on how much you voted, they got
I remember that.
But besides that, there haven't been that. And I mean, I like this, to try to get more people involved and to support their teams. It's really. I think overall, I think it's good for the game and the communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. A point that was raised on the Angry Chicken, which I mean, I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast probably knows about that podcast. Was actually that it would be interesting to see if it could be incorporated into like the whole team standings thing. Imagining the scenario where we have this for something like a team tournament that's happening, something like with what ESL Trinity Series was doing to a certain extent.
Yeah.
That would be really great to see, actually. If you could cheer for teams, get maybe team card backs, maybe the top 10, top 8 teams in like the team standings would qualify for like some team tournaments that would then be able
card
to
backs.
And
like literally we're going down like the CSGO route, right?
Well, I mean, it's like look, Overwatch do it as well, right? I mean, that's another Blizzard game that happens in. So
yeah, what I'm saying is like, I
mean, it's something I've been
Storm card back or Fade to Karma card back.
Yeah, it's something that I think I've been kind of for quite a long time, and I think that this is an interesting mechanism to do it in as well.
Yeah, I can see it happening.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, it would be pretty cool.
yeah, I think it could definitely be an interesting improvement on the team standing stuff for next year, which I think so far, other than the visibility around team standings, I think it's been pretty successful. I mean, we see it all the tour stops. People are talking about the team standings, the casters. It gives you extra storyline. Oh, Just Saying's getting this win over Fino. Spoiler again. But it's more than just him getting a win. It's Tempo Storm getting a win over Fate to Karma in the team standings, which is relevant because
Yeah.
both the teams have been performing so well. So, these kind of things are pretty important as well. And I think they help create more of a storyline in Hearthstone, which gives viewers something to follow. And I think that's very important, especially with the number of HCT events we're seeing.
Yeah, so I think quite like good initiatives, I would say.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's very good to have these things. It's more than just a sucking you dry for all your money type thing.
Oh, sorry, just a side note. Something I just noticed now on Twitch
Mhm.
is to buy bits. If you've never bought bits before, there's actually a first time. They call it a first time purchase discount pack, where you get 1,000 bits for $11.40.
Okay.
So I've yet to crunch the maths properly in terms of working out what that means for this whole HGG and packs and things. But
Yeah.
let's see, 1,500 packs usually costs $22.50. So it's probably
So we're saying it's a little bit cheaper than probably $30 if you're a first time bit buyer. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a first time buyer, yeah.
Yeah. And, if you buy your bits in a bundle and you have some leftover ones that you don't use for cheering, you can always come and drop them on my stream when eventually I am back to streaming again.
Or
Which will
any other
probably
streamer
be
for that.
next week. Yeah, or any other streamer you enjoy.
But
But
I like
personally, I would appreciate it on dropped on my
Yeah,
stream.
good job, Dad.
Which, if you want to see when it's streaming, you can find that on my Twitter, which is below my name here at @dib_gaming. If you want to follow a VSGC champion, a two-time VSGC champion, in fact, you can find Pandemonia on Twitter, which is actually, it's over there, at Pandemonia ZA. And you can also find all the links to his Medium article and all that there, but we'll put it in the description as well, so you won't lose out. But if you want to also read the interview we've done, that's not out yet. I'll try add it to the description when it is out, but the best place to see that will be on our Twitter accounts as well. Probably be retweeting that, so make sure you check them out there. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. Thanks a lot, Pandemonia. It's been quite a long episode, lots to catch up about, but actually a lot of exciting news. So a really good one to come back to for Magma Rages. So thanks a lot, everyone. As always, we really appreciate any feedback. You can give that to us via Twitter in the comments section. Your thoughts on any of the announcements from Blizzard? Are you excited about some of the new cards? Maybe let us know in the comments below, as the cliche is on YouTube. Thanks a lot, everyone. Cheerio.
Cheerio.